Hi, Mrs. Ramirez here. We have learned so much in Module 1. Let's look at some of the highlights. So, we've started at the very beginning of the year with ratios. Remember, if we have, I'm using some of these numbers, we can use ratios and write them like 5 to 6 using a colon. We can also use them 5, the word to 6, as well as using it looking like a fraction, which is the value 5 out of 6. So, using this information also on a tape diagram, the scenario is apples on a farm in acres. So, there are 5 acres of Empire, 6 acres of Macintosh apples, and 9 acres of Fuji apples for a total of 20 acres. Now, if maybe the farm has more and they want to create a bigger farm and keep um, the same ratios, they could remember when we had every unit creating now having worth 5. So it would be 5 groups of 5 to equal a possibility of 25. And remember every unit, so 6 groups of 5 to equal 30. And same thing up down here for the 9 groups of 5 to equal 45. In that instance, it would be a total of 100 acres. And we also have been using this information and putting it in a ratio table, letting it grow this way. The Fuji apples up here were 9, and we went all the way to 100. So, for example, 9, how we grow these tables, 9 times 3 to equal 27. And we would have to do the same thing over here, 20 times 3. 20 times 5. 9 times 5. That's the multiplicative growth of that ratio table. We also have worked through graphing coordinate grid. It was larger, so I couldn't put it on there, but I used the Macintosh for this. Macintosh 6 groups out of the 20. So my X is the total, and my Y variable was the Macintosh apples. So over to 20 acres of total, and that's 6 that we had up here in our tape diagram. So when the Macintosh apples grew times 2, so did the total. So it went from 20 to 40, and it would go to 12. So the coordinates here would be over 20, so that's our X, up 6. It did flip around a little bit, but for this one, it would be over 40 and up 12. It's growing in the same manner. This is steady growth, therefore it starts at 0 and it makes a straight line. Whenever we have steady growth, it always creates a straight line. This is our slope. So we have also used them in graphing. We also are making double number lines, which is kind of the next graduation of the tape diagrams. So if we're talking Empire and it's way up here at 5, if we started 0 acres of Empire, 0 total, we had 5 acres of Empire and it kept growing, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25, then we would have the total, which is 20, which we got from our original information. It would grow 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. The Empire section, the additive growth would be plus 5 every time, and the total growth would be plus 20 every time, and you see that it's consistent all the way through. So if the farm had a total of 60 acres, 15 of those acres would be Empire. We also worked and figured out an equation using a lot of this information, and we always have to define our variables. So right here we have our variables defined. Sorry for the crossouts. I figured it out, or I changed it my mind once we were working. T equals total number of apple acres, and N equals number of acres of Empire apples. So we've got, if I had 1 acre of Empire apples, I would multiply it by 4 to get a total of 4. This 4 here in our equation is the constant. And we remember whenever we have a number next to a variable, a number next to a letter, it means to multiply. That's why we have 4 parentheses 1. So we have also worked with our ratio that equals the fraction, equals the decimal, and equals the percent. So if we go from the ratio, we'll go back to the 1 to 4 as a ratio. I could make that as a fraction. It's the value 1 to 4, which, if I'm going to work towards a decimal and a percent, is a good idea to have it out of 100. Use my giant one. 4 times 25 is 100. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 1 times 25 is 25. That can make it easier to make a decimal and also percentages out of 100. My percent, 25% there. That break puts it all together, showing us the ratio, the fraction, the decimal, and the percent all together. That is just some of the highlights of what we have been learning in Module 1 this year. Happy learning!